It was a crazy hit of adrenaline to even get one yes. When we got an actual yes in more than one, it was like, oh my God, we can actually do this thing.
It became real.
This all happened in the course of 12 days.
Wow.
This was very fast, yeah.
Whirlwind.
This is a whirlwind.
Hi, welcome to The Hurdle, a podcast where we talk to interesting, everyday entrepreneurs.
We tell our stories. I'm Max.
I'm Jade.
Let's dive in.
Let's go.
Welcome back to The Hurdle. My name is Jade.
I'm Max.
And today's guest has the same name as you.
Almost. Maxwell.
Almost. Maxwell
Yep.
Richardson-Davis. And he is the semi-new owner of a bagel shop here in town that we love.
Yeah, we get it every Tuesday.
Here at the office.
Yeah.
And they're so delicious.
Yeah, because
I didn't know why. I didn't know this was a thing. They're boiled.
yeah, did not know that's what I was missing in a bagel.
Right.
That's very important.
Right. And
Yeah.
apparently they're the only shop in town that boils
Yeah.
their bagels.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, they are online, huge presence. Everyone on
Right.
Reddit says they're the best bagels in town.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they have a crazy Reddit
Yeah,
presence.
it's insane. But yeah, he was the manager, took it over, changed the menu, redesigned the place.
And did a lot of administrative cleanup work.
Put a lot of systems in place.
Right.
Yeah, kind of turned it
Finances.
around a little bit.
We're not in great shape.
Yeah, he was spending 90 to 100 hours a week
Right.
for the first 6 months.
Right.
And then eventually those systems kind of...
Yeah.
For
He was
playing
able
his-
to scale back,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
a little bit, and
yeah.
let his employees take over and start to manage it, so he could be continue to manage it, but not be as involved.
Really cool
day to
story.
day.
Really cool story.
Totally.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Let's meet Maxwell.
Hello and welcome back to The Hurdle. We're super excited to have Maxwell with us today. You're the owner of a bagel shop, a very popular bagel shop here in Oregon. But it's kind of crazy because you don't have a master's in bagels and you also didn't have an MBA, but somehow you ended up owning and running this very popular shop here in town. So how did you get into this role?
Yeah, well, my investor likes to joke that I do have an MBA in bagels.
You've earned one.
Obviously do not. No, I actually am a college dropout. But I ended up owning the restaurant Lock, Socks, and Bagels in South Eugene by honestly working there and was one of the managers there for the previous owner. And I was really working that job to set up a videography company with some friends. So it was kind of my day job to help pursue, an entrepreneurial, creative type of dream. And in the end, the former owner kind of, waved the flag due to some personal issues and, called it a day on the restaurant. So, one of the other managers there, Ben Garcia and I, who works with you guys now, we literally went and had a beer at the bar that's neighbors us. And he was like, I don't think it's ever going to open again. I didn't truly believe him at the time. He was...
Oh, because the shop closed.
Closed, yeah.
When the owner decided to step away.
The owner decided to step away. We really weren't... There wasn't a lot of communication happening there, so we weren't sure, what was going to happen with our jobs and kind of the restaurant.
Okay, so the employees were left in the dark.
They were left in the dark.
Not planned.
Yeah, it was not. It was not planned. Yeah, we didn't get a warning or anything. It was disappointing for us. Obviously, we loved, catering to our local community, and we loved the product that we were making. There were some obvious telltale signs, some issues with how the restaurant was being run. But we decided to. He made a joke. He was like, well, I grew up internationally as a reference. So I had some fun connections to some richer folks, and I had been a personal assistant to some bigger CEOs in town in Eugene. So it was interesting. He was like, you should use those connections and set up some meetings. And over a beer, I was like,
set up some meetings
to maybe see what's going on at the bagel shop, see if we could reach out to the former owner, see what his plans were.
Okay.
And, that's a new world for me. So I figured, why not, start a conversation with some of these bigwig CEO types and see what we can cook up. And ended up developing a plan that we ended up pitching to 10 different investment groups.
Did you have any like aspirations before the owner stepped away to like run this place? Like, was this ever something you had considered when things were maybe starting to go south?
Yeah, so one member of the investment group is a relative of mine, and so every time he would visit in town, he would kind of give me the lay of the land and take me to investment meetings, which are in hopes of becoming an entrepreneur at some time.
Interesting. That's cool. Really cool experience there.
Yeah. And so he would always make jokes, kind of quiz me if we would get coffee and he's in town, like, if you had to run the bagel shop, what are you learning about this business? So beyond that, no, not really. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to work for myself. I had that drive in me for sure. Obviously I was working on a videography company, so a little more creative, maybe a little less profitable, but that was kind of my focus, was to do something more artistic and entrepreneurial. But I had been reading the books that, some of these folks that I've worked with in the past had recommended and things, and listening to some entrepreneurial podcasts, but it was very casual.
So you have a short list of 10 folks, or around 10, right? I'm just picturing like pitching a bagel shop. Like, that's not typically, to invest, that's not necessarily like the hockey stick up and to the right. Like, it's going to be a unicorn, one day. Like, how did those pitches go?
Right. So I think the established popularity of the restaurant was already very helpful. The fact that I had invited a lot of those folks and they'd already eaten at the restaurant. And, knowing them, they're busy Monday through Friday. So every time they came in, like, there's a line out the door. And so they would notice things like that. And then, they would kind of poke and prod and be like, well, what do you think the numbers are? And what do you know? So luckily I was surrounded by some folks that, could kind of play that game and teach me a little bit. But
and they saw the value, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think they saw the value. And, with that, and then me being kind of a young guy that had worked with a lot of these people previously, I think that kind of got me in the door.
You had those connections and the rapport, and they trusted you.
Exactly. So it wasn't, it wasn't just, me cold calling strangers. Sure. But to Max's point it's not a typical investment. Right. So the idea is for us to grow, and we treat it much more, I call it like a startup than an actual restaurant. A restaurant kind of insinuates there's a chef running the show every day. This is going to be like more staff based. I did that in the beginning, but then replaced myself out of that role. The idea for us is to continually expand. So you want access to those investors, running it from year one for what they would consider a small loan. Obviously, it sounded huge to me, but
for them,
jumping into this new world. Like, I personally owe all that back.
Yeah, so, right.
Really scary. But that's the name of the game with the investment and doing these things. So kind of developing those relationships and being able to have the conversations with folks that were already familiar with me. And I think they believed in me. They saw a need in the market. There's a reason that we're so, far out of the main kind of city square, if you will, the main parts of Eugene. And yet we have a line every weekend. You got people driving.
So they know the founder or the person now running it, right? They have a personal relationship with you. That's great. They know the product. A lot of them are big fans of the bagel. They see the line outside, right? But at the end of the day, you're not going to just give someone money just because you know them and there's a line out the door, right? So were there any specific questions, like from a financial perspective, that they asked you that, that like was kind of like a make or break, like what's net profit, growth, seasonality, like whatever it is?
No, they did ask me a lot of questions I was not prepared for.
Sure.
I'm much more prepared today. I like to think, at least.
Yeah. But how awesome that you were just going for it.
We were just going for it. Yeah. We just jumped right in the deep end. So, it was almost exactly what Max said. We had questions of seasonality. We had questions of, what are the slowest hours of your day? What are your slowest days? We had questions on, expected return on ROI, things like that. What's marketing strategy? What's the branding strategy? and then of course, really the biggest concern is, what's the actual cost, and when do we expect to see that back, and what are you comfortable with in terms of like a loan percentage, and or ownership stakes? What am I comfortable giving away? Am I willing to listen to them? As a young entrepreneur, a lot of them wanted to be more hands-on with me directly, and that is, I think, because if I give somebody, even though it might be considered a small investment, it's still, a large chunk of money to a lot of the population. And these guys don't get, wealthy by continually giving out money. So they, they invest in plans and divest in bad plans. So, so as, as they would almost challenge me in a lot of those pitch meetings, and really trying to dial in the exact number, really trying to dial in those things. Obviously, I didn't have I wasn't privy to the sales data of the previous owner.
Okay.
So while I could remember it off the top of my...
Because you were the manager there, right?
Yeah, and I had access to those things while we were actually working. I couldn't, it wouldn't be legal or correct for me to take that information without, established permission and things like that, which we weren't able to get at the time. So, so we, so I had to kind of guesstimate, and and I had to learn a lot of investment terminology relatively quickly.
I bet it really refined your knowledge of like what you needed to know, like getting these questions right. Like,
absolutely. And then and some of the local entrepreneurs were hyper focused on things like, well, who would be your food distributor? How do they raise costs? Are they communicating that with your company? And really nuts and bolts questions, which I think helped a lot. Because focusing, paying attention to the little things and being on it, having a great rep from a good food wholesaler and things like that. If that relationship changes or eggs all of a sudden skyrocket, you want to be able to communicate and figure out why and be able to adjust and things like that. So, so they definitely, all the questions really helped perpetuate my growth as a business person, because I wasn't a business owner then, but yeah, it was very challenging. Some of them I stumbled over my words, and
well, that's why you set up 10, right? Like that's not you just going to one. But out of the 10, I think you said you had 3 successful offers, right?
3 successful offers, yeah. And to be completely transparent, 2 of the people didn't show up to the 10, so we really only did 8 pitches.
It's almost 50%. That's pretty good.
So we lost 20 off the bat, and then we did 8 pitches. Some of them were me calling folks that I had known in where I was raised in Dubai. So it was a Zoom call, with the translators.
Wow.
Which was hilarious to invest in a small bagel shop in South Eugene.
Do you know where Eugene is? Yeah.
And actually, the University of Oregon has a strange connection with the country of the United Arab Emirates. So there's a lot of UAE Emirati folks that are students. So they totally knew where it was.
Interesting.
Which blew my mind. Yeah, that kind of shocked me. So 2 of them were like that. And one of those guys was a yes. The other one was like, why am I here? This is so small beans. And, he didn't understand why he was even being contacted.
Gotcha.
So he must have just run into a meeting that, the secretary gave him. And so that was an immediate no, just because it literally, I think the no wasn't because of the pitch or anything. He didn't have any questions. He just listened and left. I think it was just not worth his...
Not the right fit for
not
him.
fit for his portfolio.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's investing in, $hundreds of million companies. So, I think this was way too small for him.
Sure.
A second guy in Dubai that we had contacted, was kind of speaking about expanding it, nationally or fast expansion, or maybe bringing a shop over there, things like that. So he would still be my play if I was ever to get too big for my britches, if you will. If we were talking past 5 locations or something, I would probably contact him again. The others were all local entrepreneurs, or there's one in Portland, but the rest were pretty much Eugene based.
Okay.
And yeah, we went in their meetings. Those would have been at the offices of their businesses in town. And again, I don't want to divulge their information without their permission, but those went pretty well. Got a lot of tough questions. Those were a lot more nuts and bolts. That was a lot more kind of what you would expect. and it is kind of crazy to pitch a bagel shop at all, but it was that one wasn't some big grandiose meeting with some millionaire. I mean the local connections were previous places of employment, things like that, when we were chatting with them, obviously they were a lot more on the ground. They understood the local economy a lot better, and they understood what we were doing and what would be reasonable, and focused on very specific questions. So we worked with them, and a few of them liked our pitch, not like my pitch. I was just doing this all alone. Once we got, then we kind of. Then it became a different conversation of, okay, well, we've got some real offers here. Like, are we actually doing this thing?
Right,
and
right.
What does that mean? And who do we contact? And
So
how
were
do you
you-
start a business? What's an LLC?
Right.
So while I kind of got, trained on how to present the business and learned, some investment terminology, and was able to develop, kind of like, what am I trying to say here? As we got through the pitch, I learned a lot more about this particular business and business in general, but I didn't actually have any foundational knowledge of how to create a business. So the X and Y, Z kind of things, the paperwork, do you contact the IRS? Do you do it online? Should you use this, service that costs this much, or should you do it yourself? All those things. And it can be kind of intimidating if you just Google it and have no idea what you're talking about. So we got those offers. And
at what point did you decide, I'm going to go for this?
I mean, at that point, we had already rushed, and it seemed, it was a crazy, hit of adrenaline to even get one yes. I assumed that no one would invest in this. So I almost did it jokingly, which was actually relieving in the meetings, because
If it didn't happen, you're fine, right? Like
100 exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't buy that it was a real idea, right? So I was like, oh, this will be a great story. I'll learn a lot. I might reconnect with entrepreneurs that, could help me fund maybe the videography company, or I could maybe work for them as a day job again, things like that. So it was a scouting, mission as much as it was a business pitch at that time. When we got an actual yes, and more than one, it was like, oh my God, we can actually do this thing.
it became real at that point.
Very real and very quickly. And remind you, this all happened in the course of 12 days. This wasn't.
Wow.
This was very fast. Yeah.
Whirlwind.
This is a whirlwind. Yeah. I was the manager of a local, cafe type of thing, and it was
Now
obviously
you're
the
pitching.
bagel shop.
Yeah.
And now I'm, suited up. So it was a lot of work. It was very fast moving. You can see why I butchered the couple of the first meetings. And
so which one did you go with, and why?
we went with so that all becomes, that actually was one of a more strategic business plan. So one of the offers, was for an ownership percentage where they would actually pretty much be the CEO of the company and have me working as like a chef on the floor until they felt I was comfortable enough to take the reins, which would have been beneficial in a hell of a lot of ways. Learning payroll from a professional, having their team behind me.
Set up systems.
Yeah. Also, making an investment, what I was asking for financially was not, I didn't have any money past what I needed to make the purchase, which means that the company was immediately relying on the first day sales to perpetuate the next day, which was idiotic and very stressful. There's no reason I couldn't have asked for 20,000 more, and of course it would have, the loan would have taken a little longer to repay. There would have probably been a higher percentage rate on that, but I mean, that would be the call in the future. I would highly recommend that.
Well, so you went with the offer that did not have a stake, right?
Right. So so back to the offer. Sorry, I got a little off track there. They wanted to be much more hands-on, and they would have, been this active CEO of the company. They also offered a number of deals. So they had one where they were 51% owner, 50% owner, or 40% owner.
Oh, interesting.
and those would have changed, how much they were willing to invest, what, how much and how quickly I would have to pay them back, what that total number is, and what my role would be in the company, and then like what I would need to listen to them for. So so it was going to be very hands-on, almost maybe like a little bit micromanaging.
Too much for you. Not a good fit for you.
And yeah, I don't think, I mean, thinking back, it could have gone either way, but the actual catalyst of what made the decision for us, for me, was we got a cheaper loan that was a private loan to me, which means zero equity and zero even relationship to the business, which can be, a little scarier for the person taking on the loan. But also, it was such a better deal. I mean,
You say cheaper loan, just lower interest rate?
sorry, yes.
Yeah,
I meant a lower interest rate. So as opposed to a 5% or a 10%, which would have been the one we were really looking at, would have been the other local person who had, was willing to take stake in it. And they would have had a different percentage based on what tier of ownership that they would have had. So what percentage of ownership that they would have had access to. So, getting, I can be transparent about this, getting a 3% loan directly to me, a 3% interest rate on the loan, would be obviously better. And then I maintain 100% ownership.
Right.
Obviously there's a risk, if that company defaults or, declares bankruptcy, I'm still on the line for that personally.
Right.
And then I missed a lot of the hands-on experience. I don't have a team that
You're on your own, pretty much.
you're on your own. Yeah, you're on your own,
That's a
and
lot,
they're
yeah.
expecting to, get their check month one.
Right,
So,
right.
their first check.
So you opted.
So it was a lot of
for-
scarier, but
Yeah.
but then of course, it's you maintain 100% ownership of your company. You can do what you want with it. You can expand. And this is a great opportunity to show a bigger group of investors that you can kind of come and deliver.
In the future, if you wanted to expand and get another loan, it's like, hey, I did this on my own. I didn't have anyone helping me out, and it worked out great. So now I am.
Yeah, and you
I'm
can
the
even go
person.
back to them and be like, "Hey, look, worked the last time. Let's
right.
go bigger." And this is, where I identify things that we're making mistakes, and you can now plug them in, and and work with them a little bit better in those regards. So yeah, it became kind of a big test of like, can he do it alone now? And they would he'd watch. They would call me into meetings. A variety of them. Obviously, as I mentioned, one of them is my relative. So he's the one that's always testing me the most, and obviously has the most care for me in the business. So it's interesting, and getting to go to some of those meetings with those guys has been really enlightening.
I bet.
Incredibly beneficial.
So last point on this, you mentioned that if you were to do it again, you would have actually asked for a little bit more money.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and our buddy Ben can attribute to this one too. It got dicey quick because, you have payroll in 2 weeks. Some of that payroll is, you had folks that were helping you build the actual company out, running to Home Depot with you, doing a redesign. So their first check is going to be, relatively soon after you open, and obviously bigger than, some other folks. You got do huge food orders, how much food do you need? You have no idea. You have no basis because it's a reopening, which is presumably going to make you busier. But then also, what did the other company make? You don't have access to all those numbers. You're going off memory, and you never, as a manager of a bakery, you're not like hyper focused on that at any point in your life. So it was very scary. Like, and who are the food contacts in the industry? You're a new guy. They're not going to give you a great deal. They're not going. Nobody's going to. Cisco's not coming with their handout to tell you, oh, this is how you save a bunch of money.
Right.
So a little more money would have helped set you up.
We really should have had a nest egg. And it also avoided, the equipment was old that we purchased, so there was immediate repairs that needed done that I didn't factor in. All sorts of little missed, it's the small stuff that gets you.
Trial
But
and
this
error.
is a small business, and it's all about trial and error. So learning those things, and then just being exhausted, not having the time to properly flush that out in any admin sense, not really having a great computer, not really having an office space, all that stuff we could have fit in there and purchased and gone a little slower, worked a little bit more intelligently and efficiently, as opposed to just rushing through it. So that was really where my lack of leadership skills or entrepreneurship
Well, I mean, now
really
you know,
began
though.
to show.
I mean, now you know, and like you would have never known. Because I mean, if I'm getting a loan out, I'm going to take the least amount I would want, right? Like I don't like being on the hook for more than I would need.
That was exactly my line
Yeah.
of thinking.
Right.
And actually, I would correct that line of thinking going forward. If you believe in the project and, you're truly going to do this, make it comfortable, make it work,
Right.
If we weren't as popular as we were, if we didn't have a great staff at those times, we would have, we could have easily just run ourselves into the hole immediately and, crash the plane before we got it, before we got it in the air. So I would definitely, going back, if you're playing this game, commit,
Right.
and get yourself a little bit of breathing room and,
Okay.
and make sure that you have the tools set up to properly do this. Don't be running a business off your phone while working 12-hour days on the floor,
Right.
while freaking out about, the bank account today. There's a smoother way to do that, and it will reflect in your reviews, especially at a restaurant. It will reflect in your clientele. It will reflect in staff retention. It will reflect in your investment meetings if you show up dressed well, not covered in flour with huge bags under your eyes. All these things will help you, especially how stressful restaurant life can be, or the industry, the service industry in general. I would highly recommend, you need that time to be able to read a book and catch up and do your homework. You need
Balance.
that time to do some paperwork. There's no, if the company's going to work, you can always hire or fire employees. You can always change your food order, all those type of things. But giving yourself the time to have those meetings would have really saved us a lot of pain, and we would probably be, much further ahead on our loan repayment, but on just in general, like we would
Okay.
have been a more profitable company if we had done that pretty
Question.
easily. Yeah.
Question. So, talk to us about some of the main challenges that you experienced in the very early months of running the business.
Yeah, so it's 12 days, right? That's how long it took, right, to get the loan.
I want to say it took about, I'm not 100% sure on the timeline, but it was since the closing of the doors, I think it took about, somewhere between 12 and 15 days to actually get the meetings done. And so arrange the investment meetings and get them done somewhere around that range. Because it wasn't that long before I could go back to some of the staff, like a Ben, like a Sierra, and then ask them to come back. So they were able to come back and help me redesign the restaurant. So it was a lot of cleaning and Home Depot runs and things like that. And then the opening night, we actually slept in the restaurant, some of us, just on the chairs. The night before opening, yeah, because it was like 1 a.m. and we're still, drilling stuff in the wall. So, that was really scary. Then you wake up, you only get 3 hours of sleep because you have to do the morning bake. So that is boiling and baking the bagels to be fresh before open. You open at 7. It takes 2.5 hours, so you can do the math. So it was a nap. And then we dove right in, and it was a massive day, even without much advertisement. Word of mouth got around. And
That's awesome.
it was, but it was overwhelming and completely exhausting, both physically and mentally. A lot of people having big conversations with you. You're running off no sleep. You've got 7 jobs to do. The new employees don't know necessarily what to do. Things are all moved out of place in weird spots
Right.
from when the previous owner had it that we thought were good ideas, which was great, and they were better ideas, but you're like forgetting,
Right.
Where do I go to get this supply?
a bag,
Right.
or napkins. So we had a lot of misfires that first day. We didn't have enough bagels, as we sold out quickly, which left a lot of people kind of disgruntled. We noticed immediately our espresso game wasn't on point, which was, a big loss because you have so many people coming in that day, and in the restaurant industry, beverages are your moneymaker. So,
Okay.
you're hyper focused on coffee.
More than you make more money on beverages than you do on your bagels.
Certainly by margin. I don't know if my restaurant that would be true, but it's got to be close. Yeah. It's all about beverages. So the bagel with the coffee is a much better move for us. So really making sure the coffee's clean, the machines are clean, everything's well taken care of, that you're getting a good brand of coffee. You're not just going to Safeway and getting whatever's cheapest. You need to make sure it's saving. I would rather spend 20 extra bucks on, a big round of coffee, and be able to deliver a really great product that'll keep people coming back, than having one. It's all about retention. It's all about getting people to up their ticket order, which is, coffee's the easiest way. So that first day, was frightening, and I think I've gotten a little off track of your original question here. But the first day was so scary that kind of, it was really scary. So, and then seeing the bank account not really have much of anything in there other than this, and then realizing, Square takes 2 business days to transfer if you want to save a fee. Not knowing things about your own POS system, and while physically doing the job on the floor. It was just sheer exhaustion was the number one issue.
So how did you? So the bagel shop is doing very well now.
Yeah, a lot better.
So how did you set yourself up in those first few months? What did you learn from all of this trial and error that you were going through?
It was the first few months still would have been trial and error.
It seemed like you were like reacting a little bit.
It was 100%. That's a great way to put it, Max. Yeah. I was rushing through things and reacting to problems as they came, which is not a good place to be in. You're already 1 foot behind. You want to be ahead of the curve and ahead of the game. I would never have time to or know what to say and interview with you guys those first 8 months. There would have been no day I could have left the restaurant. There would have been, wouldn't have known what to speak about. There wouldn't have been a lot of things for me to show at that moment other than, hey, we're open again today. I think one of the most commendable things that our team was able to deliver in those first few months was that we did not close one day. So we were able to, actually stay open, even though the boiler went down, even though this guy's violently sick and we don't have any backup staff, even though, the owner looks like a skeleton and can't talk to anybody. I was definitely a lot lighter and a lot scarier looking, and a lot meaner in general. I just was very tired.
You were so overextended.
Well, and for 8 months is what it sounds like, right?
Maybe a little bit over that. I would say over that, but the first 8 months was it's sheer insanity. I mean, it's a blur in my mind.
So where was the breaking point? Yeah, I mean, to Jade's point, because obviously you're not reactive anymore, you're proactive. What moment happened where I was like, I can't do this? I mean, you were sprinting for 8 months. Yeah.
Well, one of the jokes I like to make, and the story didn't go exactly like this, but the kind of the fairy tale version of the story was a bunch of the times I was coming in to do the morning bake, I would see the night bakers leaving. So AKA I would watch them walk out as I've suffered to get up this early. And I just thought, why don't we teach, and I think Ben was a part of this conversation. Why don't we just teach these guys how to boil and bake them themselves? And then they can just get they were complaining about not getting enough hours, right? And we're a small business, so we're trying to focus on cutting labor down. But you could do a switch here, It's much easier to hire a night shift crew that's already used to being up at night to extend their presence a little bit than to find some professional baker who you're forcing to wake up at 3:30 every morning, and they really only work till 7, and then it's and you needed somebody kind of with skills. But it's and they would have to be there every day. What if they're sick? What if they want a vacation? It's open 6 days a week. They can't. It's not a hireable position by any means. And you don't really want a 3:30 a.m. person surveying bagels at 1 p.m. They're going to get a little
tired.
They're going to be tired. It's naturally not going to be as good of service. So immediately adjusting that kicks myself and the manager at the time off of doing the morning bake. Now we can sleep like people, right? So now the earliest shift is 6, and then we used to have 2 people come in at 6. Train people up. You can do 6:15 and 6:45, right? 6:45 is a totally hireable position, right? Especially for like adults, right? You know, where I'm talking about people in their 30s. You got to pay them a little bit more. They've got to care a little bit more. But those folks are going to come in, deliver, buy-in. So that was a massive change already. Just those has given me personally so much more sleep, and it's also allowed my managers a lot more sleep, which then allows us to have fruitful conversations of developing paperwork.
Right.
So
Think more strategically.
exactly. So then we start getting some things on the wall. Oh, there's the Oregon Health Department stickers we forgot to put up. There's the Paycom
the
schedule.
details.
There's the now we can make a recipe book. And we can laminate that and share that. So now we're not explaining to everything. Now we have the time and the energy to sit back and focus on a slow day. What if we move the bags here so at each station you can reach for all the necessary things, and then we label those.
These are all the things that you can't think of when you're exhausted, right? Like
Right.
yeah.
Or you just don't even have the energy
time,
to. It sounds so small, and you're like, there's bigger things in the world. You're like exhausted, and it's like, I'm not gonna move a bag,
Right.
So going to having that time is you're already seeing those developments. Now you have a social media campaign, you have monthly catch up with the marketing guy, all these type of things, and you can focus on the back end. And even then, there was plenty of mistakes to be made. We had some unfortunate fires where, there were some moral and ethical things. There was a sexual harassment thing that happened. And just really scary stuff. I didn't even have a policy that said, you're going to get fired if you have something.
You didn't think it was going to happen? I mean,
I would have never thought it would happen, which my investor, always preaches. It's not if, it's when. So, it's always when. So it's not if somebody steals from you, it will be when, So make sure that, make sure you have a security camera, make sure you have, a safe that's locked. Because those days I was leaving checks around, way too loosely. I actually threw away some checks, and somebody was able to write in the back. I don't know who this is. We never solved this mystery, and cash the checks. They said no, pay to the order of myself.
Wow.
And found them in the trash can. We lost $3,000. It's just like that in a day. And the cops couldn't trace it because it was a cryptocurrency account from SoFi Bank. So Chase was able to recover half of it and never the other half, and it took 90 days to recover that.
Great example though of something just little you wouldn't think of. That's $3,000.
Why are you not ripping your checks? Why don't you have a paper shredder?
Right.
I mean, just dumb stuff. And then another thing is, that person that was fired, unfortunately for that misconduct, was able to file for unemployment and get approved immediately because I didn't have a policy. I didn't write a paper of something I thought was so obvious. That person had a lot of unemployment saved up. That cost $5,000.
Right.
This is your first year losing $8,000 when you're taking out a loan.
With not a lot of cushion either, right? Yeah.
With no cushion and doing a lot of the labor yourself, $8,000 is almost 8% of your $100,000 loan.
Right.
And there's an interest on that that's growing. So
so you were able to because that first 8 months you were on the floor. You were still kind of the manager, right?
I would be the owner, but Ben would be considered our general manager. So he was doing things like schedules and stuff like that. But I was on the floor actively. I would have been on the floor at least. I mean, a lot of in the what's it called, when we were doing the morning bakes. That was, probably at minimum 80-hour weeks on the floor.
So when you started doing this night shift, is that when you kind of thought, maybe I should remove myself?
As I removed myself from the night shift, I was so nervous because I was like, the bagels will change and nobody's going to pay attention. And then I realized, oh, no, you can make a guide and train people and pay them well and treat them well. And then they'll care too. And then if they care, they'll make a good product. So
and you trust that they will, which is tough to do because you've been doing this and it's like, well, I know how to do it right.
Exactly. So I was kind of in what I call like a chef position where I was like, really nervous about anyone else doing it, which is funny because I'm not a trained chef. So I just was kind of married to it. And obviously it reflected on my name and our team and things. So it was very nerve-wracking. And so a lot of those first few nights, I wasn't getting any sleep because I was just like, I'm waiting for a text message that never came of some disaster or you have to wake up right now. I can't make it in, And that never happened. And then you grow the comfortability. And yeah, as you start removing yourself from that position, you notice you can do, oh, wait, I can remove these things. But as we got hit with massive hits from lack of administration work, then you see the value in it pretty clearly. I mean, right there, I give you 2 examples, and I could probably name you 10 more. Of, that's all those problems, not having a routine maintenance check on your equipment, is I add all those together, and it's like that probably cost the company like 25 grand the first year, maybe 20 grand. That's a bummer. That could have gone to pay that loan back off faster. That could have gone into my pocket as the owner. That could have gone to raises. That could have gone to a lot of great things. It could have gone to investment in new equipment. There were so many things that we needed and could have really used that for. And it was just really just kind of stupid mistakes.
Yeah, but I mean, you were learning while you were doing it. I mean, kind of like you mentioned, you were never an owner before, right?
No, not at all. Especially a restaurant owner, which is a hard one. These are a lot of day one mistakes. So I could easily go to a young entrepreneur now who does something similar and be like, take a breath. Like these are my suggestions. Now there's an inverse way to run restaurants too, where if you truly are the chef, and you want to do, which would probably be more fine dining, or at least typically is. Sure. But there's examples of that in town. Like Yardy does a great example of that with Chef Isaiah. He's going to be there every day because that is his dream, to make food and to expand the business in that sense. So there's a whole different way that you can support that guy. But even him, I would say, like, I don't know how his business works, but I would just say, have in that case, have a bookkeeper, have a guy who is doing the routine maintenance checks, have those things flowing around you so you can hyper focus on the food. I'm kind of the inverse of that argument, or that, not argument, but of that kind of business strategy. Whereas I plan to, grow and, exponentially grow the business. So I'm more focused on being a CEO and following in steps of things like Chipotle or, companies like that, or Mod Pizza or things like that.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how you would like to grow, and maybe just before that, how you have grown just since you have decided, since space has been created for you to be more strategic?
Yeah, post 8 month, I'm going to call it.
So I would say maybe post year. The first year was tough. Now, for our audience listening, we are, about 2 years and 9 months in. So, or no, actually, no, we're almost on our 3rd year.
Of you as the owner.
Yes. And so, and the business existed for about 3.5 years prior to that. And so, once I started noticing, where we were kind of getting, I don't want to say screwed on a business podcast, but where we were kind of getting, messed up with, a lot of the lack of administrative work and, overworking our staff was, obvious things. I realized that if I had the time to focus on administrative work, this would have correlated with about Ben leaving. So I would imagine it was a little over a year.
And Ben is someone that works here at Palo Alto Software now,
which is hilarious.
Who used to work with you.
Yes, he was our
partner in crime.
He was the partner in crime. Yeah, if there's ever anybody that would have gotten a percentage in the business, it would have been Ben. So he when he left. For bigger and better things. I'm glad he's happy with you guys. It was so scary. It was like the day one all over again. So then I had to be back on the floor almost entirely again. And that was frightening. And that taught me how to make all the recipes really fluently, write them down, strategically, and train myself with actual chefs as opposed to less investors, and get to know my business and the product I'm making a hell of a lot better than I did, and understanding a lot more about dough and how it works, and coffee, where it comes from, and what changes the taste on all these different things, and how to use the actual equipment and train people on the equipment. So it forced me to do that. That got pretty dicey again, just in terms of finances and things like that, again, because I was just overworked and exhausted. But then somewhere around, I want to say a year and a half or a year, something snapped. My 10,000 hours must have been put in or something like that. And And I was able to then create the food all myself, train the people, fix a lot of the equipment myself, which then allowed me to almost graduate into like in a more office position because I could come in, I could trust people. I know that I could train them correctly. So there's a big growth there, almost like a second step growth, if we're the crying baby for the first year, now we're kind of like almost a teenager in our second, by the end of our second, and now more of a young adult at this point, if you want to go with that metaphor. So then I could eliminate myself from the floor, and that came with the hiring of more employees, which I felt like was positive once we had a growth in our business and the sales. And then I started learning facts like we're up 325% of the last year of the previous owner. Mind you, costs and the world has changed and things, but whether minimum wage or the food costs exploded, flour with the Ukrainian war, eggs with different laws and regulations, like Oregon made all of their chickens free range, drastically increased the cost, overnight. Big corporations did not play that game until they were forced to. So there's a big change.
Did that mean that you had to raise prices?
Yeah. So of course, and we do raise prices incrementally. Yearly, you kind of have to. You try not to break that dollar amount. We end all of our things in a 9, and that psychologically can make it look a little cheaper for the guests. But so there's all sorts of strategies like that.
We were just talking about your suppliers, and you went from Cisco, who you kind of inherited from the previous owner, right?
Right. So a lot of it, right, exactly. So we were kind of just buying the same things as the previous company. We were a bit hesitant to change, recipes or things like that. But after a while, we get to this point where I have the more administrative time, and it made a lot of sense to revisit those relationships and find the best deals. I mean, prices that you can't control really are labor and food cost in a restaurant. I mean, you can a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're going to need X amount of people to do X amount of things, and you're going to be buying eggs from somebody. So, but finding somebody that is willing to deliver them for you and take the weight off your plate from driving cash and carry every day, from searching for deals at Costco on your own time, and really be like, hey, we can offer this and send you a report. And, I go once a week to those restaurants or, food suppliers, those, retail food stores, and, figure out those prices and do those comparisons for you. Was just like a huge relief. Not to mention it was a local company. So that was McDonald Wholesale with our rep Taylor Stimson, who's a great guy, and his boss Jazz. They're not only that, they even offer you like free food shows tickets once a year in Portland and all sorts of fun stuff. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm spending a lot of money. Like, let's use this in a more strategic way, and let's cut down. And kind of formulating that with having your GM on the floor, and after you've learned all the information about your business, I'm not going to say I know everything, but I can run the kitchen by myself if I had to. I know where things go. There's a reason that they're there. I can explain pretty much anything that's in the shop at this point, why it's there, what its purpose is, things like that. One thing we had was just like dishes that we didn't need from the old owner, so taking that, taking that stuff out and clearing space in a small space. So doing all those things, but really we're having your suppliers and your wholesalers and then your staff report to you has then allowed me to then, navigate difficult situations that arose later in the future by being able to have those meetings. I can chop down my food order or cut it in this way, or maybe extend my ACH if it's a particularly tough week or something like that. ACH is going to be like a direct payment where they have access to my bank account. Okay. So it would be like I place an order and then 7 days later, that's going to automatically come out of my bank account, but it involves some signing of paperwork and things like that. They did, with that ACH, it's like, oh, you're having a hard week. Could we expand it to 14? Well, if you have a great relationship, they probably will, and know your cash flow issues that all arose from not having that initial 20 grand in the background, are, relatively easy to solve, and you're not operating, 2 steps behind. You're being proactive about it. And things like that. So, it's really important who you choose to work with and why, and making sure that, what you're supplying to your guests, a lot of guests that are like, oh, you make the coffee, of course, but I don't actually make the coffee,
Right,
right?
right.
The coffee beans.
Right.
That's our friends at Farmers Union. And then, and we have a proprietary blend for our espresso.
Interesting.
But yeah, and the reason we have a little bit of differentiation there is the espresso is cooked through an infrared process through Cascade Estate, also good friends, but they do it, and it's makes a little less acid, a little easier to go down. So especially when you're making those sugary mochas, people don't really want that strong taste.
Gotcha.
At least would be my argument. I think that there's other shops that would do the inverse of that.
Right.
But we're not necessarily an artisan coffee shop, although we strive to be. We're definitely, focused on making drinks quickly and making them good. So we have a Starbucks right by us. So just kind of beating that standard and using local suppliers is a big deal.
Well, and this goes back to like your focus on coffee, right? That was like when you were the manager before you owned the company, that wasn't necessarily a focus.
No,
right?
I didn't I hardly knew how to make a latte, so I can
Right,
tell you
right.
it wasn't a big focus.
Right. But then you learned about the profit margin.
Then I got, beaten up by my investors telling me, hey, it's all about the beverage, it's all about the beverage. How
Right.
much coffee are you selling? How much coffee are you selling? So when I say these drastic numbers like business increase, 300% or, above that, I think it was literally 312% by the second year in comparison
Wow.
to the last year of the former business. Actually, not to say it's, we're billionaires by any means, and we probably won't be off one location, but or even millionaires, but it is doing a lot better. It's a manageable business in comparison to, obviously he left for a reason. So
Largely that's because of the coffee, though. I mean, like,
I would say, shoot. Obviously business has increased. We're selling a lot more food. I can tell you that by looking at my flour bags every day, but yeah, no, I would attribute at least 50% of it to
Wow.
just that.
Wow.
So just focusing on coffee, making sure those pots are clean, making sure people are paying attention, making sure it's consistent amongst your staff, making sure the station looks clean, especially because it's right behind where people place their.
it's self-serve, right?
Yeah. Well, the self-serve for the drip coffee, and that's just because on the weekends we're moving too fast. We can't, and there's no
Right.
space behind us. So it's a smaller location right now. Hyper focusing on like the espresso machine though, right behind it is what I'm talking about. If you do the milk and steam the milk, you can leave that wand, looking really nasty, and somebody might look behind you, especially if they know anything about coffee, and be like, I don't really want to order an
someone
espresso
else's.
from this place. So just, again, it's just cleanliness protocols. Mistakes definitely happen still, and they probably always will, but you can eliminate that by,
Right.
consistent training and talking to people, and just, you kind of got to be on the butts of your staff a little bit, but
Right.
finding a way to navigate that. That's not very not some big uncomfortable conversations. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
just make sure we write that down. And
Well-
even that, yeah.
Sorry.
No. Even
Interrupted.
that, I was just gonna say is I'm a lot more comfortable in those type of conversations and things these days. I think that changes the atmosphere
Yeah.
of where you're working quite a bit. If your boss is always stressed out, and looking tired,
That's a trickle-down effect for sure.
definitely does. And as does the as does a positive version of that. So, just being willing to listen to people and take the time, move a little slower. All that stuff is a lot easier to do now that, I have a lot more office time, and even like going from the office, I know there's a new hire there, right? Just poking my head and watching how they're being trained, and, jumping in a little bit, but not trying to step on anybody's toes, but, just contributing in those kind of fashions really makes for a much better life, and for the business, of course, but also for all the staff that works there, and hopefully the guests that come by and visit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Before we talk about what's next for the business and where you hope to go in the future, I'd like to briefly touch on this strategic decision you made to sometimes sell out of bagels.
yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about
Yeah, that was super interesting to me.
how you learned that this was a way that you could kind of, I'm getting to the punchline here, but increase demand?
Yeah. Everybody likes a line. So, nobody enjoys being in one, but, if you walk around New York, kind of the first joke in your head as you pop your head in, if there's a line and it's really busy, that's where you want to eat. So just kind of maintaining that mentality. Initially we didn't sell out on purpose. We just sold out, right? And it was hard to predict, with space limitations and things, and really watching labor, how many bagels you would want to make and things like that. And then, how much food are you wasting at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't mind a sellout day. So they would happen every once in a while. And that would just be usually on busier days. Then we realized that people would come, and at first you're like, oh my God, I'm going to disappoint all these folks, right?
Yeah.
But then they'll be like, I'm going to be here, on time next week. And they will. And then they start telling their friends it was worth the wait.
Yeah.
And it builds this hype and kind of, excitement around your product. It also makes it seem like you're doing well, which is great for investment meetings and things like that.
Got to be doing well for a reason. Bagels got to be good if people are waiting.
Exactly. And people will talk about that story. Like if I can just walk into a restaurant and it's okay, and walk out, probably not going to mention that to a lot of friends. But if I had to strategically go to this bagel shop early in the morning and then I love the bagels and it was totally worth it and I'm sharing one, I'm going to share one with you. It's like a shareable food that creates a new customer. Your word of mouth is always going to be the best advertisement for the food industry in particular. So
now you strategically sell
now
out.
sometimes now we obviously have the capacity and can afford the labor to create the bagels, as many as we want. In terms of the space limitation, but probably we would never be able to sell. There's very few days that we've ever experienced where we filled up every tray and then completely sold out. That's only happened twice maybe. So now there are days, right, where it's like, oh, business has been kind of slow. It feels dull on social media. We need to get interactions up. We want to get more people talking about us. So, you kind of pretend, and by pretend, I mean, you just make X amount of trays the night before.
Right.
Do it,
Anticipating that
that'll probably be a little bit less, and than you need. And, and kind of gambling on the fact that you selling out will again evoke that kind of conversation and those experiences.
So cool.
No, it's brilliant, but you didn't know that day one though, right? You didn't know what days were going to be.
That was definitely just watching how many times we sold out and the effects of that. And then there's an inverse argument, you can make too much and throw away more, but the guy who comes in at 155 and wanted 2 dozen everything bagels can now actually buy it. So you can increase those numbers. So really we actually do it kind of if we see our numbers getting lower, we'll kind of, we'll have a day that kind of makes you remember it's not always there. You can't always get it. It is really good food, and speed through it, and then the next day, all of a sudden, you have a big line because a bunch of people are like, "Oh, I don't even know if they wanted a bagel that day, but now that they can't,
now they want it. Yeah.
They kind of they're like, I need one."
Yeah.
So it's an interesting kind of psychological thing. I'm not sure if we'll make that a policy or not.
Sure.
But it is funny. I mean, I will say from watching the books, being able to sell out every once in a while is very good for business. It seems.
Awesome.
Well, it's funny because there's seasonality over the year, right? Fall's a little slower, winter's dead, spring picks it up, summer it's really busy. I'm just throwing that out there, but but the opposite. But there's actually a weekly seasonality, a weekly malady. I don't know what it's called, but Mondays is going to be different than Saturdays, different than Sundays, right?
Because you said football days where we have a game.
Football is huge for us, so go Ducks. Whenever schools are in session, we do better. Summer is our slow season, which is good. That's when the staff should take all their vacations and whatnot. It's football does really great, big local events. The Butte to Butte marathon, it comes to mind, and then just being in the right neighborhood, being by schools and being by the temple and being by all sorts of office space and whatnot, and residential is great. So
cool. So what's next? What are you thinking about for growth and
so I've been doing tours around town for a couple years, kind of not super serious. We did
Tours around town looking
Eugene for Springfield for a
at
second brick and mortar.
second brick and mortar location.
Yeah. So we were thinking about that. We did develop plans for a food truck, and
That you're going to run.
that we were thinking about running. Yeah, we haven't married any of these ideas yet. We kind of I did the exact opposite approach. Instead of rushing, I want to really take my time.
We are learning.
Exactly. I want to make a flushed out plan for every kind of potential option, and then sit down with.
We're big planners around here.
I love it.
We like the way you
think. I see why Ben fits in here. So that was, never really my nature. So I've got to slow down and really, do what we're doing, because I imagine it could very well become just like the first few months at the other location pretty quickly for me. So I want to
mitigate that.
Yeah, I want to. Exactly. Want to make sure that we're making the right decision. And I always love, if I were to ever sell the business, having options that could be built out immediately is going to, make the sale worth a little bit more. We're thinking. So we've developed a food truck plan, pretty much fully flushed out. And then we're also thinking of what I'm calling like pilot locations. So how would be where we create the bagels still at our facility, and then take them, bake them in the morning, have like a runner in the truck. They would probably open a little later than our main establishment right now. And you wouldn't need a hood for those things, like a big commercial hood. You wouldn't be making like hot food in the same way, but you could do bagels and cream cheese and coffee at all sorts of little different spots, or like the locks and things like that.
And would this be like at a farmer's market, or where would these
Sure,
pilot
so you can
locations
do, so that
be?
would be like more of a pop-up, which we're also thinking about developing a plan for that. That would be an easy way to increase ROI pretty immediately. No, we're thinking of like at Fish Street, how there's those smaller, there's a small Allen Bros in there at one point, or even like Lovely, if you're familiar in Spring.
So like little shops.
Yeah. Where you wouldn't have the space for a big oven, you wouldn't have the space for all this, but you're saving on rent, you're saving on labor.
Cool.
And again, we know all the money's in the beverages, so we're hyper focusing on that. You would get a really great barista, but it would still be a presentation from Lock, Socks, and Bagels. So still our lox, still our cream cheese, still our bagels. You probably wouldn't be able to get like a dozen or anything there because they're not baking on site. Sure. But you would have day-old bags, things like that. So it would be a little bit different. We would probably present it like Lock, Socks, and Bagels presents a new name. And those would be like what we call pilot shops, because we know that they're going to be more efficient, they're going to be more profitable, even if they make less money, just based on the fact that they have a lot less overhead.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
So you have all these different options that you're looking at. How do you, it's a big question, but how do you choose what to do next?
Yeah,
right?
so incrementally, we're going to definitely try and do a couple pop-ups next year and flesh that out. But
So why though? Why that one as opposed to any of the other options?
So this one would be probably in conjunction with another one of those options. This one is kind of easy because the staff is excited about it. They get to go look like big community members, every Saturday or every Tuesday, right? And a lot of our food suppliers would be our neighbors at those places, so we would actually be able to get some business done quickly. It's a really low investment. If you get you have to check with the health department, of course, and you get that year-long license permit, permit. And you're ready to go. It is expensive if you're doing them like day to day, because of that license. I think it's like $350 for a day, but I think it's like $1,000 something for a year.
Wow.
So it's something like that. Don't quote me on that.
No, we're quoting you.
For the government, but easily Googleable information.
Yeah.
So the fact that the staff is really behind that and they're kind of interested in doing it already would make it like I can give them raises internally to go run this extra thing, and we'll still be make more of a profit. And it would also allow us to hire a couple more part-time people, which then if people get sick, it's really easy to navigate and manage internally. So that's kind of like a natural progression for us that we see like a lot of other bakeries. Crestwell Bakery, for example, does it in Crestwell, but also in Eugene, at the farmers market on Tuesdays, and things like that. So that's kind of a natural progression. In terms of like what the administrative team is focused on, we're going to be focused on either that food truck, a second brick and mortar, or those pilot locations. The pilot locations are obviously the easiest. The only concern there would be, inundating the night staff who's creating the dough here and space, so you could only scale so far.
Yeah.
You could only do so many given how much space we have now.
Right.
So expanding into a bigger space would then allow you to do that. So then it's like, well, then the idea should be get a new brick and mortar, make sure it has more space, and then
Get production up.
get 2 of those, make it on the opposite side of town. I live in Springfield, so Springfield Main Street's calling my name, right? I'm a member of the chamber out there. Learning about the investments in that side of town and hopefully becoming a part of that. And then using those 2 locations now to make a pilot maybe on Fish Street, and then make a pilot maybe deeper in Springfield, in the Thurston type of area. And then you're really like starting to talk, and then you have replicability. Now you have probably the overhead to pay for more of a proper administrative team. That's not me running wild with a fractional CFO and a couple investor guys. And, again, with access to that investment, if we can keep showing them that there's, they're going to make money off this, get a return, and we can manage it, they're going to keep expanding. Why wouldn't they,
I think that's super interesting because a lot of times we think of looking at different options, different scenarios, and it's like, okay, what makes sense on paper? But like the big thing you just mentioned was my staff is excited about this, right? And like it's so hard to retain staff.
Right.
I just think that it's the intangible stuff. It's you can't put that on paper, but it like you're noticing like my staff is excited. It's kind of improving morale. I mean, it's exciting, right?
Yeah, my manager Bree is like, always hounding me to, she's like, we need to be at the farmers market. This is like our people, and these, and so it's like, bring us there. Tell me what it's going to cost,
Awesome.
And
Love
then I
that.
can pay her a little bit more because she developed maybe a bonus because she developed this huge plan. You know what I mean? I can then take that plan to the investor, be like, hey, instead of spending my own $5,000, just add $5,000 to that loan. And that's why, the loan is kind of fluctuating, but that's again, why risk your own money, really? I mean, of course, I will have to pay it back at the end of the day. I'm a personal guarantor on that, which will be the last time I hopefully have to personal guarantee anything. That will be my play, at least. But it gives you that time, especially if you think that it's a good idea. So if you think of something like a pop-up, you probably need a nice stand, some banners, maybe a toaster, an espresso machine. That would be more for like almost a residential because you can't plug it into a wall. I mean, what's the cost? It's $3,000, give a $500 bonus to the person who's going to set it up, and, tell them that they can make $1 more an hour, whoever wants to participate in this, if they're willing to go tear down setup. We don't have a truck. If they're willing to use their truck, they probably deserve that, plus a little mileage, So la-di-da-di-da, you do all those things. Now this person is hitting 40 hours a week as opposed to 25, excited to work for you, making good money. They're not going to move on unless they get a great opportunity, and feels like a community member, also feels heard from internally by their boss and things like this. If you can marry those kind of ideas, that's like what I call win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome.
That's like what you want to focus on because they're natural progressions. But we won't need much of an investment. We just really need kind of more time to like message those people and get that permit and just do those type of things. But the pop-up seems like an inevitable next step at this point. And then the idea of actual, expansion, which I'm calling actual expansion, that of course would be an expansion, but
The second brick and mortar.
would be second brick and mortar. Yeah. And you can even do things like open on Mondays. Right now we're closed on Mondays. Do we have to be? Probably not anymore. So
Because,
and when we first opened, we were closed on Tuesdays, and so we progressed to open that one, and it's probably going to look like we're going to open Monday too. Just really trying to maximize you already have 2 prep people there. Why not add 2 more people, and that will pay for all that labor that day at minimum. So at the very least, even if it's not the most profitable day, something in your pocket is going to be better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Rad.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's so cool.
Well, I'm get something up in North Eugene because that South Eugene it's too far of a drive for me. That's what I want.
either.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we sure love your bagels. We
Every Tuesday.
we eat them every Tuesday. Our office buys your bagels, and
Actually,
it's always
I was late. Typically, they go out in about 30 minutes.
Oh, they're
Oh,
quick.
really? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
They're,
Well, that's good to know.
yeah.
Yeah, and I missed it one Tuesday, and it was a bad week. The whole week, just not
Ruined
fun.
your week.
It ruined my week.
Well, and one of the cream
Well,
cheeses.
you know where to find us. You're a VIP over there, Max.
Yeah, right.
All right. Is it time? Okay,
What's-
can I get the
what's the
can I
sound?
get the sound effects? The for lightning round. Okay. All right. Quick questions, quick answers. Daily habit that helps you stay grounded and focused on what's most important.
Okay, new habit. Only been doing it for 6 months. I wake up every morning, put on Bloomberg Live TV to get in my little finance zone. I do 250 crunches, 50 push-ups, and take a really cold shower. And I'm
Wow.
always ready to go now. It's changed my life. I swear to God.
Really?
I
Really?
swear to God. Yeah. It was, and I started at like 50 crunches and 5 push-ups. And by the way, it was very incremental growth.
I love that's awesome.
Yeah,
Love
and the
that.
cold shower, I don't know what it is. You just, boom, feel a little better. You feel like you've done some self-care before your day even starts.
I've tried to do that. It's too cold.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tough. It's a challenge, but I like it. Then you feel like you've already accomplished something before you leave the house. So there you go.
All right. Number 2, lesson you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey.
It's too many to count. Probably just the importance of, relationships with your, whether suppliers, staff, investors, guests, customers, friends. Take the time to listen to people, and don't feel rushed, If you have a great idea, it will speak for itself, and you'll learn that by speaking with others. So, and hearing what they have to say. I would say listening, becoming a better listener was very, very, very helpful for me.
All right. Misconception people have about running a small business.
I don't know. I'm so in the small business world, I don't know what the outsiders think of us these days. I would say misconception about a small business. I think people think it makes more money or has more power than it truly does, probably. I think they also think like owners have more time. Small business means you're hands-on, so just really probably how much it truly takes to run a small business. I don't think we really respect our small business owners as much as we should. These are, they're providing great services for society. They should be looked up upon. Previous generations really did. It's kind of a little bit lost. It's a hard thing to be a positive community member, and we should applaud those people. So I hope I'm one of them. I hope we're doing a good job. But I would say, there's always more to learn, and there's always further to go. But I would say just the impact of the impact and the hard work that it takes.
Okay. Looking back, what might you have done differently in your entrepreneurial journey? Just one thing. I know we've talked about several today.
I wish I was a little more educated on the terminology and the back end of the administrative work. I wish I had put in a couple years of that, maybe not dropping out of college to pursue art and, focusing on some business stuff. I also don't think I would have bought that idea back then when I was that young. But I would say just being able to speak the language of folks above me. Sure. That'll help you open some doors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one for our lightning round today. What's one thing about bagels you think people should know, but they probably don't?
They have to be boiled. They have to be boiled.
And why do they have to be boiled?
Without going into the history or anything, because it's lightning round, they, it gives it that crunchy exterior, gooey inside. If you're not doing that, you're just making circle bread. So
We're not a fan of circle bread
love
around
that.
here.
Circle bread. Gotta boil the bagels. Gotta do it the right way. Gotta do the historical way. So that would be the most important thing. And
Circle bread.
So
That's awesome.
dang delicious.
yeah, I love gotta boil them. Yeah,
Awesome.
boil and bake. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so fun having you on the hurdle.
I appreciate it, Maxwell. That was a lot of fun. Great name, by the way.
Max to Max. Love it. It's been a phenomenal day.
Awesome.
Really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
All right. And thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
You guys.
Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you next time.